Opening Night Live. It just happened. You may have missed it. I'm here to recap all of it for you. This was a 2-hour showcase hosted by Jeff Keighley over at Gamescom, focused on brand new game announcements as well as extended previews of games we already know about. And honestly, I thought the show was good. I thought it delivered on its promises, which was not really overhyping the product. They talked about the games that they were going to talk about with more extended showings of Sonic Frontiers, Hogwarts Legacy, the Outlast Trials, and so on. There were many more game announcements here than I actually expected. Maybe I just wasn't paying close attention, but I was really surprised to see how many new game reveals were there and how many of them actually looked really good. So I'm excited to talk about this one. Again, it wasn't the perfect showing. There were some weird moments like a Hideo Kojima podcast. We'll talk about all of that separately in a moment, but for now, I want to go over all of the announcements in the order they arrived in to save you the time of watching an entire showcase. So with that, let's begin with Everywhere. This was the first announcement of the show, and I don't think it was a good one. Everywhere is a game that never really describes what it actually is throughout the entire multi-minute showing, which again, minutes count in these showcases, right? You're eating up a lot of precious time and you want to start strong. They talk about it's this bold, ambitious new vision. It has a lot of Project Spark for you Xbox One fans, you may remember that, or say Dreams for a more recent example, type of energy. But it never really describes it as that. It just says the players are in control. They're a big part of the community. They're going to drive the experience as much as we are. And my chat, when we were streaming this, was getting a lot of NFT energy. I gotta say, I'm right there with them. When developers are avoiding explaining the game and what it is and what its mechanics are, either it's way too far out to be announced or they're trying to hide something from you. The wool will not be pulled over our eyes that easily everywhere, so I'm not really crazy about what I'm seeing so far with it, but it does have room to maybe show me up. We shall see, but very little is known about it otherwise. After that, we got into Dune Awakening, open world survival MMO from the Dune series. Pretty cool. Never seen Dune, never read Dune. I've been told I should check this one out. I do want to see it, but honestly, this is one of the problems with the showcase. A lot of CG energy here. We need to see the games, and it feels like some developers and publishers are collectively losing the plot of how to reveal your game. It's not about the concept. It's not about whether it's art or CG, what it may be or feel like. I can't believe I'm still saying this in 2022. Just show us the game. These hiring-like announcements, which we'll get into some later on in the show, one in particular really left me longing for more, need to stop. This is one of those games that I think could have been a big splash. It is exciting to know that there are more Dune games on the way for fans of the franchise, but I would have loved to see more for an open world survival MMO. See what that actually is, but it doesn't seem like they were ready to show more. After that, PlayStation steps in the mix. They announced the DualSense Edge controller. This was actually pretty neat to see because PlayStation's now offering their version of the Elite controller that we see for Xbox, a more customizable, premium option for those who are hardcore into the PlayStation community. I think this is good for those, again, who are really into that type of stuff. Y'all know how I feel about controllers if you've listened to Defining Duke or any type of my Xbox news videos. When there's stuff about the Elite controller, I'm not losing my mind over it. I think premium controllers are great. I think cosmetic customizations to your controller are great, but my eyes are on the screen. But yes, this was announced. Expect it to cost an arm and a leg if the Xbox Elite controllers are anything to go by, and if that's the case, it'll be like a car payment's worth for your controller. So prepare your bodies for that. Afterwards, we got to see what was one of my favorite games of the show. This game continues to look really, really good, even if the frame rate is still a little bit lower than I'd like. The Callisto Protocol. They show this thing off, and there were a lot of little mechanics that they just organically displayed. The dodging, the melee parrying, the way you could push enemies into objects and how they would interact with them. If you didn't cut off the limbs of enemies quick enough, they literally tear off their skin and transform into a bigger, badder, scarier version. There was a lot of blood in this thing, man. I mean, when you threw an enemy in the grinder, at one point, the player character moves towards where the grinder is spinning and it starts raining blood on them. Absolutely awesome attention to detail. There's a point in this game where the player is like water sliding, and I just said the whole stream, I'm like, that's a dead man. That's a dead man right there. We know this is going to be that like Tomb Raider 2013 type of death, and lo and behold, that man got chopped in half by a fan, and it was disgusting. But this game looks awesome. So much Dead Space energy, of course, because a lot of the original Dead Space developers are working on it. Complete spiritual successor to that franchise. This looks incredible. I truly hope it does land on its December 2nd release date. They were still firming up December 2nd. while they were there on the Gamescom stage, so I imagine we can trust it, but who knows? Things change rather quickly, but this is one please keep your eyes on, especially if you're a survival horror fan. Callisto Protocol looks awesome. It just needs to get that frame rate up a little bit. After that, we got a really strange announcement. This was another CG reveal. It was for The Lords of the Fallen. That may sound familiar if you paid attention to Souls-like games that were trying to follow in the path of Dark Souls at the time. There was a game called Lords of the Fallen. And now they're doing their next entry, and even Jeff Keighley kind of threw a jab at them saying, yeah, they kind of left out the two. They added The Lords of the Fallen, and again, not much that can be said about this game, like with Everywhere, like with Dune Awakening, because I don't really know what the game's going to be other than probably a Souls-like. There was a big focus on the lantern and absorbing souls from your enemies, and so that could be an interesting mechanic unique to this game. Again, we have to wait and see, but this was kind of weird, again, because of no number 2 at the end. I don't know what's going on with the naming convention in video games where we're putting number 2 at the end of games that are prequels. I'm talking about you, Red Dead Redemption 2, and we're getting games like The Lords of the Fallen for a reboot of a game that only got one entry in, like, I think 2014 or something like that. So really strange times indeed, but that was announced here. Then we got some gameplay for a cute looking game, Moving Out 2. It's getting a sequel. It's coming in 2023, and this game looks awesome. I never played the first one. I believe it's on Game Pass, but I might be mixing it up with Unpacking. But Moving Out 2 looks really fun, especially with some online co-op. It looked like there were little puzzles inside the levels. It had a lot of Overcooked energy, but except you were like moving packages. And so I could see this being a really fun collaborative time with friends, both online and on the couch. So this was a really pleasant surprise for me as someone who never really tracked the first game that much. I would like to try it out, but this looked like an absolute blast. Afterwards was one of the games of the show for many. I need this game to make me feel something, man. It doesn't look bad. Let me make that clear. I just need to somehow activate the sleeping Harry Potter fan within me. So Hogwarts Legacy, or as I like to call it, Hogleg, got shown off at Gamescom, and it was another great showing. It kind of hinted at what seemed like choice and consequence a bit. Like there were moral choices to the spells you could use because there was a lot of dark magic focus here, and you use the dark magic, and the guy comes in, he's like, what have you done? So I don't know if that's a part of the main story or a choice you can actually make. If there's real choice and consequence in this game, that will shoot it up my personal ladder quite a bit. It's amazing because it's so popular, and I've never been so disinterested in such a popular world. Like, I've tried to read the books, watch the movies, and I'm hoping that this game has what I call the now Guardians of Galaxy effect, where when I played Guardians of the Galaxy, I wasn't a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan after watching the movies, but then played the game and I went, I like these characters a lot more now. So I think that just interactive medium helps me a lot. Maybe being in Hogwarts, exploring the world around it, could help me become a Harry Potter fan. So I am excited to check this one out. Still coming out in February. Afterwards was new Tales from the Borderlands. So this is a game that leaked, as Randy Pitchford said on stage when announcing it, and now they were confirming it for everyone. Not my type of game, man. I don't know how else to say it. I've lost my interest in a lot of these just narrative-only games. The first one I played in a while was As Dusk Falls, but perhaps it's a sign I should go back into these more because that is one of my games of the year. I really, really liked As Dusk Falls, especially its co-op mechanics. But new Tales from the Borderlands, I can't sit here and pretend I'm excited for it. I didn't like Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I didn't like Borderlands 3. I start to feel more and more as time goes on like Borderlands might have been like a two-hit wonder in my eyes, with Borderlands 1 being this revolutionary co-op experience, and then you had Borderlands 2, which told a surprisingly good story and had like S-tier DLC. It was like maybe a lightning in a bottle moment, because a lot of the people who I loved that worked on Borderlands 2 have moved on to other projects or just don't work in game development anymore. And I feel like the writing, which was a stronger component of the franchise than I ever gave it credit for initially, is now not good, just to put it bluntly. And I can't just play a game within the universe that is focused solely on the writing when, in my past two experiences, that has been the worst part of the game, beyond Borderlands 3's bugs, which in my review experience were terrible. Speaking of bugs and glitches, let's talk about the next game, Sonic Frontiers. Ready for a hot take here? I'm talking all this smack about Borderlands. I think Sonic Frontiers actually looks pretty good, man. I've said it from day one, and I know that may be the coldest take you've heard in a while, but when I saw it, just there was a part of me, whether it be doubt or disbelief, I don't know, but when I saw that IGN preview, I was like, that's not the product we're getting. There's no way in hell, after all the Sonic franchise has been through, both good and bad. Like right now, it's on the upswing. People like Sonic again. Sonic is relevant, more relevant than he's ever been. You got to get the games right. So to me, it just seemed like a miscalculation. I was like, this doesn't make sense why this ambitious Sonic game should preview this bad. And the ideas there look good. Afterwards, we got a Nintendo Switch trailer, which debuted at a mini direct a couple months ago. And it was there that I saw a couple of the linear levels, and many of us went, okay, that looked much better. Now we got another extensive preview. This game looks good. Like the locales, the energy was much more serious. The story is by Ian Flynn, who's writing the Sonic IDW comics, and apparently these are legendary pieces of work. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm right there with you. I despise Sonic until this year. And while it's not a great franchise, it is absolutely flawed. There is a lot to love about it if you do approach it with an open mind. I gotta say, Sonic Frontiers has a lot of energy that I've been looking for from the franchise in modern entries for a while. So it looks good. A little worried about all the kind of auto grinding and bouncing off of pads. You know, we need more thoughtful level design there. But yeah, I wasn't one of those people initially having a meltdown when I saw Sonic Frontiers had floating rails in the sky because, look, I played Sonic Heroes. Rail Canyon literally had just floating rails out in the middle of nowhere in a canyon just because, and that came out in 2005 and people loved it. So to me, par for the course. Maybe I've just accepted it for what it is, but I digress. I think Sonic Frontiers actually doesn't look too bad. Afterwards, we got Under the Waves. Not much to be said about this one. Again, another game that just sort of showed up, faded away, and that was it. Need to know more to talk about it more. But what we can talk about is Goat Simulator 3. This one, just everything happened. I don't know. This game looks wild. Like, I'm not into these types of games, but I will say I want to try this one out. This looks out of this world. I actually couldn't believe what I was seeing in certain instances. There was driving, there were mini games, there was like melee combat. I don't know. It was really out there, though. So if you're looking for a wild, wacky time, Goat Simulator 3 might be a game you should look into some more. Return to Monkey Island also made a showing, coming out this September. Thinking of my editor, Lockmort, for Retro Rebound. He always sends me stuff for this game. He's big on this one. So shout out to him on this one. I hope you enjoyed what you saw, buddy. But for me, I'm not into these adventure-style games. They're not bad, but I think a lot of OG gamers are going to be very, very pleased with this one. Moonbreaker. This one really caught me off guard. I still don't know how to feel about it because it looks solid enough. It's just that this is almost like a board game, but it's a turn-based RPG. So you'll be able to take these miniatures and paint them. Like, that's a lot of board game energy. But at the same time, it's turn-based. And I think it's a budget-cutting move because there are 3D assets, but the characters on the statues, but the figures that are placed on the board don't move. They just have effects that play around them. So if you are into board games like I am, I thought this game looked pretty cool. It comes from the developers of Subnautica, who a lot of people seem to really appreciate, meaning that I think this is in capable hands. Afterwards, Friends vs. Friends. This game looked interesting, but the initial trailer didn't sell me. But when they switched to this more neon white first-person shooter with card mechanics, I was in because neon white was legendary. So I was about what I saw here, but definitely want to learn more on that. Afterwards, game of the show, Lies of P. Also day one Game Pass. Keep this one in mind. What Bloodborne energy do we have here, and what did I do to deserve this? Because it looks incredible. It looks smooth. It is the answer that we have been waiting for. I have been begging alongside hundreds of thousands of gamers for a Bloodborne remaster, and I can't even imagine why we haven't gotten a next-gen patch yet after all these years. But I digress. We haven't. So here comes Lies of P, which even if Bloodborne had a next-gen patch or a remaster existing, I would be very interested in because this game looks bad to the bone. Gory, really interesting enemy design, very like automaton focused. It looks like a more polished version of Steel Rising, which is coming from the developers of Greedfall, Spiders. So if you want to use that as a bit of a comparison for how it looks, but what a smart get for Xbox. I mean, this game looks fantastic. It's another great single-player game, great looking, I should say, single-player game coming to the service. And I'm just very excited to get my hands on this. I was ready to pay for it. Seeing it's in Game Pass means a lot more people are going to be interested in it. It's also another, it seems, collaboration with a Korean studio, which was really nice to see Xbox, broadening their horizons with who they reached out to. But even if Game Pass wasn't in the mix, this game looked phenomenal. I was all over it. Looking forward to learning more. Then it drops down a little bit. We get Stranded Alien Dawn, another one of those trailers. I'm like, I don't know what I just saw. I don't know what the game is. It was just CG. Okay, I'm going to go move on with my life and probably never remember this game. A lot of these announcements had hiring energy. Like, we're looking for people to help us work on this thing to make it a bigger deal when we're ready to show more. Not a fan of that. What I was a fan of was Atlas Fallen. Outriders energy here. The vibes were strong, right? You see it in the CG trailer, kind of generic, kind of like something you've seen before, very shiny, but the combat, there was something about it. It was very visceral. And then everyone's going, oh, CG again. Gameplay right at the end with sandboarding, with it looked like co-op elements. This game looks legit. I'm keeping my eyes on this one. I thought it looked really, really good. I want to see more in an extensive fashion. Hopefully, the combat looks as smooth as it did in those brief snippets of gameplay that we got. Afterward, Homeworld 3. Can't act like I have much to say on this one. I know it's a big deal for others, so I don't want to be disrespectful, but for me, I just saw it and I was like, okay, cool. Homeworld 3, not much for me to add there. Also, not much for me to add is for Genshin Impact 3.0, as well as Honkai Star Rail. I know these are big games for the Hoyoverse fans. I've tried Genshin Impact in the past when it first came out. Was not in love with it. I want to give it a second chance at some point down the line, but I think the last thing I need in my life as someone who's on a huge JRPG kick right now is a live service JRPG game, to tell you the truth. But it's something I want to really take another look at some point down the stretch, and they continue to support it. I just wish I could buy the game and that be it. But anyway, let's move on to another one of my favorite games of the show. This one was a little more contentious for people. I totally understand why. High on Life. This game's humor just gets me, man. I grew up on the Oddworld games, so really ridiculous types of grotesque humor has always gotten a great laugh out of me since I was a kid. And hearing guns curse out bosses and an interaction back and forth, to me, was such a good time. It looked like an absolute romp. It had me laughing throughout the whole trailer. Plus, the movement looked good as you were rope swinging from grapple point to grapple point. If it was just that shooting, it didn't look superb, but I think the writing and the interactions were helping lift it up. But I can also see a lot of people going, these guns are annoying, they need to shut up. Also, this humor, not my speed. That's the problem with humor in games. But for me, it was really clicking. I was really feeling this game, but it may be spotty for some of you out there. I don't know if this will really synchronize with all of us and we'll all be on the same page. But for me, High on Life, I was already excited for. Now I know this game is absolutely hilarious, so I can't wait to play it in December on the 16th. Way too long for my taste, but alas, the delay season continues. Afterwards, we saw the Expanse, a Telltale series. So at first when I saw this, I went, why is Telltale doing what sank their company, which is like partnering up with these shows, with these brands, and trying to make spin-off material for them? But then I saw more like 3D exploration, more actual gameplay elements. It looked pretty good. It did have its Telltale elements of like choice and consequence, but it looked more like a video game and not just an on-rails narrative experience. So, you know what? I'm willing to give it a shot. I don't know much about the Expanse, but it seemed pretty cool, and this game looked more solid than I gave it credit for initially. Afterwards, a really surprising announcement. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Can't act like I know about this B-tier movie from the 80s, but this is what I love about video games, that enough passion for a particular IP will get you greenlit. And here they got an idea, and they're going for it. I love that it even exists. I don't know anything about it, but I love that it exists. Could be a good time. But it's coming from the director of Friday the 13th, and I know a lot of people are kind of like, on that game, so just keep that in mind. Moving on, we have Scars Above, Tomb Raider vibes. If you're looking for sci-fi Tomb Raider, this is giving me that type of vibe here. I gotta say, it has potential. I wasn't in love with it, but I could see a lot of people gravitating towards it. So keep your eyes out for that one. This announcement was painful, though. I do apologize if I say it wrong. Wyrosong. This game, it starts off with a trailer saying from the developers of Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Skyrim, Oblivion. Like, I'm just seeing these games, Dragon Age. I'm like, oh my God, hold up. I sit up in my chair. I go, we're paying attention to this one. Chat lights up. Everyone's losing their mind. It's like a 30-second concept art trailer, and it's going to be a new AAA RPG. I want to know more. But this one hurt, man. I need to see more. I will be keeping my eye out on it just because of talent alone. It could lose my interest very fast if it doesn't look good, but because of the talent, I'm willing to keep an eye on it. Afterwards, Xbox made another appearance. Age of Empires 4 is getting brand new DLC. The Ottomans as well as the Malians are showing up. So if you want to go ahead and give that a download, you can check that out. Afterwards, Gotham Knights, it got its release date bumped up by a week. You'd love to see that, especially in an era where everything's getting delayed, that a game is in a good enough state that they say, hey, this can arrive about a week early. Let's do it. I know a lot of people are down on this game, especially because of its combat. This trailer in particular hid the combat. Makes sense based on what folks are saying. So that's something you should be privy to, because I like the world. I like the story concept. I love all of the representation of figures within the Batman universe. So I'm liking what I'm seeing, the Court of Owls. Like, there's a lot of cool elements here. I'm just worried about that combat. And when they hit it in a trailer about 2 months from launch, definitely a little concerning choice there. They hit it. Like, you'd see combat animations, but it wouldn't be actual combat happening. So yeah, beware of Gotham Knights. I think the game looks solid enough. I think it's getting a lot of crap, unfortunately, but I know it's not going to reach that Rocksteady level. I think that's pretty apparent now. This game looked great, but it needs some serious work. Where winds meet. We had a man walking on water, walking in thin air. It was like as if in Skyrim you hit the console command key and typed in TCL, toggled the collision off, and just started walking around the sky. Like, we saw stuff like that. Thinking to myself, what am I even looking at right now? This game looks ridiculous. The combat looks solid. I don't know if it was the bit rate for the stream or what, but the frames were dropping heavily. This game needs work. Take your time, because it looks like a fun one. It's got a little bit of what I think Wolong would look like, but it needs more time in the oven for sure. And if they can clean it up, they got a really cool looking game. Some Ghost of Tsushima vibes while I was watching the gameplay unroll. You could see some inspiration from that. Absolutely. So this game could land on your radar. Keep an eye out for it. Parks Beyond. Not the game I'd associate with Bandai Namco, but I digress. A park builder sim. I'm not in love with this just because, like, I got all that energy out of me when I played Thrillville on the PS2. I haven't wanted to play a park sim since, but I know a lot of people do dig these types of sim building settlement type of games. So if you're interested in amusement parks and sims, this could be your game. Afterwards, Dorfromantik was confirmed to go to the Nintendo Switch. I think this game's art style is beautiful. I do want to check it out. It's got some Catan inspiration, it would seem, with the octagonal pieces that are gradually filling up a board. I could be wrong about that, but definitely want to give this one a look if I have the time for it. But it's coming out late September. I'm going to be reviewing a lot of stuff heading into October, so I'm not necessarily holding my breath. I'll get around to it, but it did look good. Keep an eye out on that one. Outlast Trials was up next. This is one of the games marketed to get some gameplay at the showcase, and it sure did. This game looks twisted, man. I have not played Outlast since the first one. That game scared the life out of me. I felt very vulnerable. This game actually looked like it had gameplay and things you could interact with, so it did look like an improvement in that regard. The open beta is happening relatively soon, so you should keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, afterwards, we got the trailer of trailers. And what I mean by that is we got the finals. This game, I don't know why it was even in the showcase. What a brief snippet. It was a teaser of what will be a teaser for gameplay next month. So I can't say much about the finals because, again, it was one of those things where I felt like developers and publishers had lost the plot. Like, we don't know what this is, dude. You need to at least give us that to make us interested in checking out what the gameplay is. Just making us confused and going, check it out to learn more in a couple of weeks. That hurts you more than it helps you. Please learn from others' failures. And then the last game that was shown was Dead Island 2. Dead Island 2 looks good, man. I gotta say, Dambuster, not the studio that I would call the MVP. They made Homefront the Revolution. That game was bad. But I gotta say, what we saw for Dead Island 2, between the CG trailer, which captured a good vibe, and then they almost got us, gameplay afterwards, it looks way more solid than I expected. However, we're coming off hot on the heels of Dying Light 2, and Dying Light 2 was one of my favorite games of this year. I thought it was excellent when it worked. So hopefully with all this time in development, the least that Dead Island got right was A, it's fun, and B, it worked. Because Dying Light 2 was great, but man, was it buggy. So maybe Dead Island can, cement itself back in the zombie slaying scene. We'll see, but this game did look like a fun time. Much better than I expected for a game that has been in development for a hell of a long time. And that was everything we saw at the showcase. Now time for the WTF moments. Things like Kojima's podcast got announced. Okay, so as someone who was like speculating but not necessarily expecting Kojima's Xbox game Overdose to show up here, what are we doing, Jeff? Why is this a thing? He even laughed afterwards because it's ridiculous. Like, the man used Jeff's platform to announce a podcast. I just can't get over that. I can't get over that. I really can't. Like, it's one thing to have a ton of mobile game ads and be angry about it, but this isn't even like angry. I'm just flabbergasted. I'm like, I just got promoted a podcast. Imagine that. Like, I'm starting a podcast and I get to say to 1 million plus viewers, hey, I'm a legendary game developer. Come check this out. Like, this man's just going to hit the ground sprinting. After that, they showed a car with Pokemon in it. We're told not to play Pokemon Go and drive. The Pokemon teams up with a car that can play Pokemon. I don't know. You explain the logic to me. Again, very out of place, I felt. Very odd. And the trailer that they made for it, where Jeff's like, I'm on the show floor next to the car, and they do a cutaway and it comes back, wow, that looked great. You could tell it was like literally one full shot. Like, I've done enough video work to know they cut out the silent part where Jeff faked the reaction, like, wow, that looked great. So that to me was the more cringe-inducing part. And then this random astronaut ad, I think the intentions behind it were great, but it was just kind of there. And that was the thing. There was a lot of great intentions with this show. There was focus on climate awareness. I think that's awesome. It's just, it kind of just was all over the place. Like, there were things that they were showing that you thought would be particular to the Gamescom crowd. They're like, we have recycling options. We have sustainability options. And they're announcing it to us as we're watching the stream, which was kind of strange because we're not there. But anyway, I thought it was a good show. I thought it was well paced. A little too many CG trailers. A little too many just sneak peeks. I wanted to see more gameplay, but I thought it was good enough for what I expected. And my expectations weren't that high, so that definitely plays a factor. With that, let me know what you think about this entire show in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. With that, take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.